Greetings. This is going to be the start of another playlist on this channel, and I have many playlists that are ongoing, and I keep adding videos to all of them. And as with most playlists, we're going to have their first few videos happen in a short time, and then after that there will be additions to the playlist on a more diversified basis, because then it joins the group of other playlists that have reached critical mass. And that playlist is going to be effectively a hall of shame for formal economists, PhD economists, because so many of them say things that are inconsistent with just basic common sense, as well as comprise a very poor prediction, and yet they repeat things that continue to be wrong because they all belong in professions where they are not required to make actual forecasts. And I'm going to explain why such a hyper-theoretical group of people are so well paid and have so much status in our society. There's no profession where the establishment of that profession knows so little about the realities of that field as with the economics profession. Their primary rival in that department is gender studies. And how did this state of affairs come to pass? Because what society has entrusted PhD economists with is to have economic policies and adjust government policy recommendations based on changes in the economy for the goal of uplifting the human condition, human flourishing and uplifting the human condition. That is what regular people think PhD economists have been entrusted with. But PhD economists are so detached from that original goal that they often say things that are very callous towards the well-being of millions of people. They think millions of people losing their jobs for no trade-off benefit is a good thing, as I'm going to explain. And this playlist is going to expose instances of very high-profile, well-known PhD economists that have been given awards by other PhD economists, saying things that are entirely devoid of any common sense that anyone running an actual business in the private sector would be shocked to hear that someone won a Nobel Prize in economics over this. And allow me to explain why this is. So take technology products, engineering, and the science of physics, chemistry, etc. that goes into the creation of technological products. You first have basic research, which is research of a theoretical nature that does not have any anticipated application. This is only funded by the government, whether directly or indirectly through government subsidies of universities. A private corporation is never going to fund this, but it has to be done because a lot of things flow downstream from that. So this is basic research, theoretical physics, things like that. After that comes applied science. Among discoveries in basic research, what can be converted into something that has some type of practical application that could even be productized? It's not the job of this layer to envision the product and the cost or anything like that, but just some practical application. An example would be a much more efficient form of superconductor, or some new material that can create better capacitors or semiconductors or things like that. Now after that, you have engineering university research. So in universities, the job of engineering professors is not teaching for the most part. That is number 2 or number 3 in their job priorities. It is to conduct engineering research and get more grant money into the university. Corporate grants, government grants from the DoD and DOE, etc. This is also true in countries outside the United States, of course. So those engineering professors who have PhDs do a lot of research in terms of greater progress towards productization of what came from applied science. So those new semiconductors I spoke about, let's say gallium arsenide semiconductors, or a new type of material for capacitors, or something new for a superconductor, or some innovations in computer science at the assembly language level, or something like that. This is engineering university research. Now you get into the private sector some more with corporate R&D. This is not done in small startups. This is done in big companies such as Intel, Nvidia, Google, etc. They have a corporate R&D function that involves laboratories, and that's where a lot of their patents are generated from, because they need a robust patent portfolio, and they want to encourage employees to innovate on things that could be patentable and eventually productized. Some of the people working here have PhDs in engineering, but many don't. This is where research is done with an objective of becoming products that that particular corporation sells, not to be out there for all of humanity to use or anything, but particular corporations. Now after this, you have product design and engineering. innovations that come out of corporate R&D, some may be useful only in the very distant future. Some might have incremental benefits for existing product lines and the existing roadmap of products. And this is where things like costs, look and feel, upgradability of the roadmap, creation of new versions, etc. are all considerations, and numerically the number of engineers working in this is always going to be much more than the number of engineers working in corporate R&D. And this is where there begins to be a tie to the financials of the company, including quarterly finance. And a lot of work over here is refinement of existing products or creating the next better version of an existing product. Now, how do they decide what product to produce in the marketplace based on price point, based on market size, based on demand across multiple countries versus just a small niche market, and the durability of the roadmap? Are there 10 versions of this product and so forth? How do they figure that out? For that, they have product management. Product management is the liaison between the sales and marketing people in the marketplace that get intelligence from the marketplace about what products could sell and whether consumers even know what they really want or not. In technology, there are many instances of consumers not knowing that they would like a certain product, but the marketing people have to think about whether this is going to be a product that will sell even though the future customers don't know about it yet. Apple is extremely good at that. But also considerations like cost, trade-offs between power and form factor. Among personal computers, desktop PCs were first, then came laptops, then came things like smartphones and tablets, because the engineering done by this layer, product design and engineering, had to be refined to a point where battery life could be long enough, where the look and feel was enough to be suitable for the mainstream so a large volume could sell, etc. You can't do a product that is going to be $100 in sales price and have an addressable market of only 10,000 people, because that's only $1 million of revenue. It's not worthwhile for any large or even medium-sized corporation to produce that. There has to be sufficient volume, and therefore considerations like market sizing, price point, price decline roadmap, because remember, in technology, the price continuously declines, deflation, not inflation. All of that has to take into account and roll up to the financials of the company. If there's a price decline of a product, what does that mean in terms of revenue lost per unit versus more units sold? Will net revenue rise in total? Will the net margin rise in total? Things like that are all considerations of product management and other disciplines associated with that. And then last, you have marketing and sales, out in the field talking to actual customers, whether it's a B2C type business that sells to consumers, ordinary consumers, or a B2B type business that sells to other enterprise. Knowing what the customer wants is ultimately a huge determinant on whether revenue is actually earned. And this feedback from marketing and sales goes up to product management, who then filters it and translates it, sends it to product design and engineering, even as product design and engineering gets innovations from corporate R&D that then go into refinements and suggestions of possible products, and product management makes a decision based on whether this feature upgrade or this new component or this new set of technologies can create a product that could do well enough in the marketplace. Tells sales and marketing about it. Does sales and marketing think that the end customer would get excited or not, and things like that. So these are 7 layers of the stack, from the most theoretical research down to products that you may actually buy and maybe looking on Amazon or some other e-commerce website about whether this is going to be on sale 20% off next week versus now, and things like that. Basic research that created the products of today happened decades earlier. The research behind the cellular phones and wireless communications of today happened a long time ago, in the 1930s and 40s. The beginnings of the internet was a Department of Defense research activity in 1969, and the earlier research that even enabled that was earlier than that. So even for the products that are commoditized and mainstream today, the basic research that made a lot of that possible happened 50, 70, 100 years earlier. Even this corporate R&D may have been 10 or 15 years earlier. So this is that entire stack in terms of technology products. Now, in finance and economics, these layers are not well formed because this is poorly understood and there's a big vacuum in between. So now we go to the next slide. You have these theoretical economists who have jobs and careers that are decided only by people like them. If you decide to pursue a PhD in economics from a highly ranked institution, your work is evaluated by people who think exactly like you. And the end output does not have any audience other than PhD economists, and therefore is not vetted. The only other audience are politicians who may use a thick report with a lot of mumbo jumbo from a PhD economist, which is way too complicated for ordinary voters to even challenge or critique or pose incisive questions about. Yet ordinary people on an instinctive level have figured out that PhD economists are actually extremely bad at what they do, and the highest honors in this profession are reserved for people who are not impressive under any other standard, as this playlist will reveal. But here's the problem. That stack that we just saw for technology products, hardware and software and everything contained in technology products, does not exist here, because you only have this other extreme. On places like Wall Street, people earn their paycheck only because of closing investment banking deals or sales and trading revenue, or creating some type of product that could be marketed to people, and that means ordinary people in some cases or institutions in others. And this is extremely free market and results driven. If you're a managing director at a major investment bank, your bonus could be several $1,000,000 per year, or it could be close to zero based on how much revenue you earned for the firm. Goldman Sachs has a very famous compensation structure tied to this. 57.5% of their revenue is paid out as compensation to people, but your compensation can vary considerably. Some people truly thrive in that environment. Their pay is based on what they brought in by using the resources Goldman Sachs has available to them on top of their own talent, whereas many people would not thrive in this environment at all. If you're familiar with this film Margin Call, this was pretty realistic about how things could have occurred in the 2007-2008 market crash, because this entire medium-sized firm, it's not a huge firm, but it's a medium-sized firm, makes a decision over an overnight period. So not even during what regular people would consider business hours, but from 9 p.m. one night to noon the next day, so a 15-hour period, the top management of that firm decides to change the direction of the lives of everyone who works at that firm across the course of just an overnight period, because everything they did was results driven. They could not afford to just sit around and pontificate for even hours about something, let alone years. And they knew that they are going to take a hit financially and that their careers would take some time to recover, but by acting first, they would lose a lot less than anyone who acted second or third. And that is what that movie is about. That entire decision to change the direction of their lives happened overnight. At 9 p.m., they did not know they would be pulling an all-night session here, but by 6 a.m., there were directions, and by noon, the entire plan was executed. This is so different of a speed of working than what these PhD economists are, because I've gone to these economics conferences hosted by the Federal Reserve and by the Clausen Center at UC Berkeley. When they show a chart about a certain economic trend, the chart ends 10 years prior to the present. I went to such a conference recently in late 2023, and the charts shown by the renowned PhD economists there, renowned as decided by other PhD economists, had charts that ended in 2013. So you're showing data that ends 10 years prior, and yet they're claiming to make predictions around that. And I saw a very distinct sense that a lot of these PhD economists don't even know the difference between past and future. As you can see from this video up here, a renowned PhD economist, Mark Skousen, when the interviewer is requesting a prediction, he's merely talking about the past, and that if this happens, then that means this. That's not a prediction. He thinks talking about the past and then pretending that the past is the future is the same thing as making a prediction. And this is a renowned economist with an elaborate Wikipedia page and so forth. And nothing personal against him, because all of his peers that are also economists are exactly the same. Nothing that he says is anything they disagree with. Now, since these layers are not filled in, that is why you have a tremendous disconnect, because the central banks of the world are run by these extremely theoretical people. They only act about 18 months too late. That's why they lowered interest rates in 2007, 2008, about 18 months later than they had to. And then they waited another year before inventing quantitative easing. Whereas these people would have figured out the solution in an extremely short time, a day or two, but more importantly, they would not have let the problem even get that severe, because they would have preempted it much sooner. All these layers in between don't exist the way they do for technology productization. My atom thesis fits over here with policy recommendations that bridge this gap. But these people, theoretical economists, don't really seem to care. They make predictions, their predictions are always wrong, but their employment is never under threat. They face no consequences for always being wrong. And that is why millions upon millions of people are harmed by this huge incompetence over here, because they get no feedback on whether what they're doing is working properly or not until 18 to 24 months later. Seeing that technology stack that we saw, there's continuous feedback in both directions. Plus, we can also see in this technology stack from earlier that when there's feedback in both directions, all layers become stronger. Similarly, people cannot just jump in a career change from the bottom to the top or vice versa. In terms of career change, unless you're truly entry level, right out of college, 22 years old, you can't jump around much. You can only go to the layer that is immediately adjacent to the one you're in. So if you're here, you can only go here or here. You can't just go directly to marketing and sales from applied science. If you're marketing or sales, you can't go directly to basic research. So you can't just jump from here to here and vice versa. That is because this is a well-functioning system that has continuous feedback up and down the stack for greater optimization of productization and generation of wealth, not only for this industry, but in the broader economy. But in this economist world, all of this is absent. Why? Because it's more primitive. The accelerating rate of change is not even a well-known concept over here. All these decorated PhD economists, and none of them even think about the accelerating rate of economic progress, which I talk about in this video up here. And so this will slowly fill out over the course of the next 25, 30, 35 years. My atom thesis is an important contribution to this because it spans a portion of this gap. Other things like fintech innovations are an attempt to fill this gap as well, but a lot of work has to be done because too much power is held by these people who are very, very, very theoretical, that are not held to account, that are paid by the government, so don't have any results they have to adhere to other than peer-reviewed results, which is from people who are just like them. So as long as this group of pre-selected people that all believe the same thing agree with each other, then apparently this group is very happy. Now, when theoretical economists believe something that is 50 to 70 years out of date, that money printing causes inflation, or that you need to make people lose jobs in order to lower inflation as if all inflation were bad, this harms the lives of many millions of people. In a field like paleontology, if paleontologists still believed what they believed 50 years ago, nobody's day-to-day lives would be harmed. None of our lives would be harmed if they still thought that dinosaurs dragged their tails and that sauropods went into the water to escape from theropods. But with PhD economists, everyone's lives are harmed. They say that 3 million people have to lose their jobs so that we can preemptively prevent inflation. What about the trade-off? And inherent to that is an assumption that when someone loses their job, their expenses stop. Only their discretionary expenses stop, which for working class people might be 5% of their expenses, but the other 95% don't stop. But nobody told this to theoretical PhD economists. I will showcase exact quotes from well-known PhD economists where they say things like this. We need to reduce employment because too many people have jobs, and that's why demand is too high. They say things like that, believe it or not. That is how theoretical they are, and that is how unmoored they are from actually improving the human condition, because many of them come up with ideas that actively worsen the human condition and never face any consequences for it. So this playlist will serve as the beginning of that process to educate more people about how we have the wrong type of individuals deciding major economic policy. I hope you find this playlist to be informative, and thanks for watching.